Good evening, everyone. We will just give the chairman just a minute or two to come into the meeting. So if we just give Councillor Hennigan another minute or so, Vice Chair, and I'll just give him a quick call to make sure everything's okay. Good evening, Chair. It's now just gone 7 o'clock and we're live on YouTube.
Thank you very much, Mike, and apologies there. I had a slight technical issue, which meant we were 2 minutes late, so apologies. Welcome everyone to the last meeting of the COVID-19 Response and Recovery Panel of the year. And if I don't get the chance, or if I forget later, hope you all have a great Christmas. In addition to our regular attendees, Ruth Dennis, Teresa Hodgkinson and Pete Hudson, we're delighted tonight to have Inspector Mark Dixon, the Ashfield District Inspector from Nottinghamshire Police, Trevor Middleton, the Town Centres and Market Manager, Ian Rotherham, our Senior COVID-19 Support Officer, and our Chief Executive of Ashfield District Council, Carol Cooper-Smith. As always, can I ask for patience should the meeting move at a slightly slower pace? This will allow us to work through the agenda and deal with any technical issues that may arise. To ensure the audio for this meeting is as clear as possible, we will be muting all microphones as a default setting to keep background noise to a minimum. When wishing to speak, I would ask if attendees could raise their hands and wait to be invited to speak by myself. Your microphone will then be unmuted and you'll be able to speak. Panel members are asked to vote by raising their hands to indicate if they're in favour, against or wishing to abstain from the motion. So without further ado, we're going to move to agenda item 1. This item is to receive any apologies for absence. Can I ask if there has been any apologies submitted?
Yes, Chair. So Councillor Caroline Wilkinson has submitted her apologies and he's been substituted by Councillor David Walters.
And can I thank Councillor Walters for agreeing to come in at the last minute and wish Caroline, I think it's a bit of flu, but she assures me that it's not COVID. But we're very lucky to have Councillor Walters, who did attend the last meeting to observe. So it was probably good practice. And Dave is one of our, he represents a senior committee on the County Council on behalf of Ashfield District Council. So we look forward tonight, Councillor Walters, to you giving us some of your expertise. So that's the apology. Agenda item 2, the item is to consider any declarations of disclosable pecuniary or personal interests and non-disclosable pecuniary or other interests. Can I ask if there are any declarations? No declarations. Okay. Agenda item 3. This item is to approve as a correct record the minutes of the last meeting held on the 5th of November. And before I ask for a mover and a seconder, I did say to the Cabinet, you'll notice in the agenda tonight, I described it as probably the most in depth and more importantly accurate minutes that I've seen as when I've been involved in 20 years of local government. So I'd especially like to thank Lynn, Mike and Shane from our committee services, because as you will see, I think at one point I thought I was going to say Councillor Shaw breathed in and out, but it was really accurate and it's really greatly appreciated. So I know it took you an enormous amount of time, Lynn. So if we could try and keep it comments to a minimum tonight to make Lynn's life easier. So can I have a mover and a seconder for the minutes? A mover, Councillor Blagden to move, and Councillor Shaw to second. Can I ask those to raise their hands, those in favour, please? Yeah, I think that's everybody. Okay, that's sorted. Agenda item 4, the report attached from pages 19 to 27 provides the panel with its monthly update on national and local restrictions, including the Tier 3 system that came into effect from the 2nd of December. At the last meeting, members also asked for the panel to extend an invite to Inspector Mark Dixon from Nottinghamshire Police, and welcome again, Mark, to the meeting, to offer an insight into the perceived rise in incidences of crime as a result of the recent pandemic. Members of the panel are recommended this evening to note the information contained in the report, to consider how the revised Tier 3 restrictions will impact communities, businesses and the council, approve our meeting dates for 2021 and with an updated work programme to go with it, and to discuss and approve any comments and recommendations that arise from this evening. Following the last meeting of the panel, Jim and I, Councillor Blagden and I, the Vice Chair, attended Cabinet on the 1st of December and presented the 7 items of concern raised by members of the panel at the last meeting. Now, I'm not going to list them all because it'll take too long, but these are listed on page 20 of the agenda before you, and they were accepted unanimously by Ashfield District Council's Cabinet. The order in which I want to take the business of the agenda item 4 is firstly an introduction and discussion with Inspector Dixon regarding the impact of COVID. I would also like to bring in both Trevor Middleton and Ian Rotherham. Ian Rotherham, by the way, welcome Ian. Ian's our Senior COVID Information Officer, and I feel like I know you already because the reports that you provide every week are extensive, Ian, but we will go through that later, but it's certainly greatly appreciated, and we have been sharing those with every single council member to keep them in the loop. I will then bring in Pete Hudson to discuss Tier 3 support and business grants, and what you'll see from Jim is the enormous amount of work that the finance team of the council have been doing. They've done a superb job and paid out an inordinate amount of money, but more importantly, they paid it out speedily within 3 days. And I think they've done an excellent job, and we'll go into that later. And then we follow that up with Ruth and Teresa and Carol for any other issues raised during the meeting. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Inspector Dixon to the meeting and invite him to talk to the panel about the role of the police during the pandemic. Inspector Dixon.
Thank you, David. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you everyone for inviting me across. So the role of policing in the pandemic, where do we start? We've started from the top right the way down to the bottom, and we'll be going on a lot further as this carries on and develops further. So at the initial start of the pandemic, as with everybody else, we had a very sudden influx of what it's going to look like on policing. We stripped back frontline policing. I went back into the community, basically for community reassurance. We put a lot of operations on hold for a short period and went really back into community engagement. With the first lockdown, we saw a massive increase in ASB, but it was a change from the general ASB. So it was no longer neighbour disputes and parking issues and all the stuff we deal with on a day-to-day standard business day. And it went more around my neighbour is breaching COVID. In a long story short, as we came back out of that first lockdown, we got a bit of normality. The crime profile changed again, so we had to go back into sort of standardised policing role with some new challenges, as you can imagine, around social distancing and the change in legislation. Obviously, legislation is changing almost on a weekly basis, so we're keeping up to date with that as much as we can. Throughout all this, the background of it is we are only human, so we have had lots of people going off sick, we've had lots of people self-isolating, we've got vulnerable people, and that has had a significant impact on our service delivery, and we've had to change the way we work in some respects. Looking forward to where we are now. Obviously, the current lockdown is now over, even though we're in tier 3, and that's given us our own unique policing problems again. Going forward, what that looks like, we take on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. I've been in this role since May. I came here the 1st of May, and I must say, working with Carol and Teresa and the frontline staff at Ashfield District Council, they've been phenomenal. Those guys have done a massive amount of work. We're doing some brilliant joint working processes at the moment. What we're actually delivering in Ashfield is being classed as best practice across the board. A lot of the stuff we brought in here, joint working certainly, has been replicated now across the force because of the impact we're having up here. So much so that now we're getting quite limited COVID jobs rang into us because we are so quick and so efficient on them now, and that is due to the joint working approach. I'll quite happily accept any questions you've got around COVID and around our general policing at the moment.
Thank you, Inspector Dixon. And firstly, apologies for all the text you get from the central New Cross area. I've got to say that I've got on record a number of times praising the support of the local police. It has been phenomenal, whether that be situations on Sutton Lawn. And don't forget, whilst Inspector Dixon spoke about the huge rise in antisocial behaviour, it was in fact 35.1%, but Paddy Tippett in a recent meeting said a lot of that was down to COVID, but they also continued with some of the major jobs. So what I'm going to do is, Inspector Dixon, if that's okay, I'm going to go through members of the panel first and then give council officers the opportunity to pose any questions. So I'd first like to ask Councillor Smallridge. And Councillor Smallridge, just for information, Mark, he represents the Carsick area. Councillor Smallridge.
Yes, I think we've had more action and we've seen a good result. And I think that this team, the latest team we've got now, are doing a lot more than we've had before, including on Carsick. The only thing that it's not quite this inspector's problem, but Idlewells, it's sad to see quite a few people wearing a mask on their chin or over their mouth, under their nose. In the hospitals, they've got prominent notices pointing out how to wear it. Can we consider this? I know you can't police this in Idlewells very easily, but prominent signs might help.
Yeah, unfortunately, John, absolute fair point. It's a source of absolute frustration to us. Legislation doesn't provide any powers for us to enforce anything around that. So anything from a policing point of view would be quite limited. It would be around the engage and explain level. We'd have fixed penalty notices or anything around that. We are doing a lot of work around Idlewells. When it comes to the sort of communication side, that is one to be brought up around with their management team. I'm quite happy to put an email in if you guys are happy, because obviously I'm sharing information from this meeting, saying that is a concern and can they take that on board. I've got quite a good working relationship with their managers. So they may take it as a suggestion from me. They may completely ignore me, obviously. It's their right. I've got some level of influence, but not a massive amount. But yeah, I'll be quite happy to take that forward. In terms of Carsick, yeah, we've done a lot of work on Carsick. Obviously, I'd like that be replicated across the area, but as you can imagine, we've got limited resources, so we are trying to get amongst everybody. You're all getting as much as we can put out. Carsick was a particular concern when we've landed. We've done a lot of work on there. We've done a lot of work on there again today, and we're out there again tonight doing more work around that area and all across the district. So yeah, we're very busy at the moment, but we're pleased to be able to support you.
Thank you, Mark. John, have you got any further questions?
No, I think that's it should put people's mind at rest that we're getting more action and I can see the difference, and other people tell me they can see the difference. I think it's working.
Thank you, John. I'd now like to bring in Councillor Dave Walters. Councillor Walters represents the Ashfields estate and all up Alfredton Road. Councillor Walters, you've got any questions for Inspector Dixon?
Not at the moment, thank you.
Okay,
I can't really think of anything that John hasn't mentioned. I was aware that the masking is very hard to enforce because it is a recommendation, isn't it? I'm sure I'll be corrected if I've got that wrong. No, as far as my observations, we're doing a good job considering the circumstances. Thank you very much, Chair.
Okay, thank you. And I've got to say that representing the Ashfields estate, you know, I can't remember. I think the last time a crime happened on the Ashfields estate was 1987, Councillor Walters. So you're very lucky up there. Right, I'd like to bring in Councillor Blagden. Just for information, Councillor Blagden represents the Centre of Hucknall and is Vice Chairman of this committee. Councillor Blagden.
Thank you, Chairman. Hello, Mark. Nice to meet you.
You too, Jim.
Mark, during this pandemic, and it's been a huge battle for us and for the police force, I can understand that. But how has it affected the working relationship with the CPOs?
I've only been here since May, so it'd be very hard for me to judge pre-pandemic because obviously I've come here in the midst of it. The work we've done with the CPOs has been fantastic. They've been well on side with us. They've worked really closely. One of the first things I delivered when I came here was a training session for the CPOs to develop their skills and understanding around what we can actually deliver and working together closely with them. So that built some good relationships. I've managed to get access to some of our IT systems for the CPOs, which gives them a bit more speed around decision making, shall we say. And we now have, we launched it probably about 2.5 months ago, the Ashfield Risk Management meeting, where members from all teams across Ashfield District Council come and we discuss specific issues. Now, a lot of that is ASB related, so a lot of that gets fed back into the CPOs, and the CPOs in return go away, do some actions and feed that back to develop that intelligence picture so we can give a more targeted response to policing. As you'll have probably seen and probably been aware, around October, November time, in the build up to Halloween and Bonfire Night, we did Operation Safekeep, which was joint patrols with CPOs. Went down really, really well. We had the lowest number of firework-related ASB incidents. I appreciate yourself and your team reported quite a few to us in the early stages, didn't you, of ASB with fireworks being thrown into flat complexes.
That's right, yeah.
That early engagement with using fire as well as the CPOs was brilliant. We was able to get all the people, explain the risks around fire and use of fireworks, and basically we knocked it off from November the 1st till November the 7th. We had no ASB involving fireworks report to Nottinghamshire Police in Ashfield. Everywhere else, they had significant reports. That we're modelling and we're rolling out, and that's going to be Operation Safekeep is going to roll on now, and that's going to be probably up and running week after next, and that will be every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night. They'll be tackling ASB. So for your area itself, Jim, obviously on Sunday night we had the issue with the boy racers up at Tesco's. That's part of Op Faraday. That will be part of the Op Safekeep ASB patrol, and we'll be doing a lot of work around that going forward. So in summary, CPOs are working fantastically well with our team. We're doing some really, really good joint working with them, and I'm sure that will continue to develop as we're going along.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. Anything else, Jim, you'd like to mention?
Yeah, just before I go, thanks for that, Mark. You mentioned that you had a problem with self-isolating. How much of an impact has that had on the Ashfield force with people self-isolate?
Yeah, it's hard to say, Jim, to be perfectly honest, because it fluctuates. So as you can imagine, if you have 1 or 2 people who get a few symptoms, quite a few people may have to drop off. And likewise, when we get everyone back, we've got everyone back. So it does fluctuate. What I can say is when people are self-isolating, they're still working from home. So a lot of the demand, they can still make working from home. So they'll make early contact with victims, they'll update jobs. Any demand they can manage over the phone or over the internet, they will do. Some of our investigations, certainly things like fraud and vulnerability, we can manage over the internet now. The CJ process has been realigned so we can take statements over the phone. So even when they're self-isolating, they're still put to good use. So it has had a face-to-face impact, as COVID has in general. But roughly speaking, self-isolating has not been that massive an issue for us. We've still been able to keep people busy.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you. That's it, Chairman.
Okay, Jim. Carried on the Hucknall theme then. I'd like to bring in Councillor Kevin Rostons. He represents the Hucknall area too. And then I'll bring in Councillor Shaw and then Councillor Grounds to discuss Kirkby. So Councillor Rostons. And before I bring in Councillor Rostons, I believe it's congratulations this week because you become a granddad again. Is that true?
That's true. Yes. George, young George.
Young George. Very, very good. Congratulations on behalf of the panel.
Thank you, Ralph.
I'll
pass those on to Phil.
Yeah, we did actually meet George last night at the personnel committee. He popped on camera for a couple of seconds, so it was lovely to see. So congratulations.
I believe it's quite noisy. I think it's quite noisy, David. Yes.
It's as noisy as Councillor Shaw is. Councillor Rostons, have you got a question for Inspector Dixon?
Yeah, Mark, we're coming up to the. Can you hear me, David?
Yeah, I can hear you, Kevin. Yeah.
Can you hear me, Mark? Yeah, we're coming up to the strangest festive period that we could ever imagine. Are you kind of hoping that we stay in tier 3 for this period, or what's the briefing for if we do come out of it for the festive period? A softly approach, or are you geared up for all the options that might be thrust upon us?
Well, firstly, congratulations to yourself and the family. Ultimately, we're prepared for everything. We've got contingencies in place for whatever the government throw at us. For me, personally, I'd like to see tier 2. I think that would be my personal preference. From a community point of view, I think the community wants to go out. They want to mingle, meet each other, have a drink with friends and family and celebrate the time of the year. Whether that will come about or not, we've not been given any indication either way. I'm sure we'll find out on the 16th, like everybody else, which is generally the way it's been happening for us across this pandemic. In terms of our policing response for each, be it tier 2, tier 3, a complete lockdown on tier 4, we will put out an appropriate response in style policing. We've already got plans in place throughout the Christmas period. We don't intend on changing them as such. All we'll do is manipulate how that delivery goes out. What you're saying around how robust we're going to be around that, there will be a sensible approach. Nottinghamshire Police have approached this in a really, really sensible manner right from the start. So going back to the start of this pandemic, there was a dog walking incident in Derbyshire where they put a drone up and did all sorts of silliness. We've never gone down that line, and we will be maintaining that really responsible, proportionate response. If people are having ridiculously big parties at an address, yes, we are going to come and break them up. If families are having small family gatherings where the group of the 3 bubbles are aligned and they're having a festive period, we're not going to come in there kicking down doors and being silly. So it will be a very, very appropriate response.
Wonderful. Have a good Christmas, Mark. That's fantastic.
You too. And all the best to the family.
And you. Thank you.
Is that okay, Councillor Rostons?
That is brilliant. Yes.
Okay, brilliant. I'd like now to bring in our third Hucknall councillor of the night, Councillor Dave Shaw, and Councillor Shaw represents sort of North Hucknall, which is like the Papawick estate and all the way up to the George Street Club. So, Councillor Shaw, welcome to the meeting.
Thank you, and congratulations, Kevin, on your grandson being born. Congratulations, Mark. A couple of questions for you. Have you seen a high demand for services? Hello.
Hello, Councillor Shaw.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah. Okay. Mark, have you had a high demand for people with mental health issues to the district? Also, how realistic is it, given the nature that we're overstretched for neighbours' complaints within the district, that your staff are overstretched and realistic? You can't respond to every one of them, obviously. How realistic is it you're going to take major breaches to court and will actually be effective in court? And antisocial behaviour on Papawick Green, has been a real issue. And would you say that was down to COVID, or was it just one of those things that's just happened to crop up while we've been in lockdown over the last month? Thank you.
Okay, so the mental health status, without looking at the figures, I won't be able to give you a definitive, have we had more calls or have we not? The general feel on the ground and what I'm seeing day to day and hearing on the radio, it's about the same as what we've always had. The officers are really, really good in dealing with mental health. We've got a street triage car, which basically is a response vehicle travelling on blues, which also has a mental health nurse there, so we can get that really early interventions. It's the time of year where we usually see an increase around mental health issues. We will usually see, when the nights are getting shorter, especially a slight increase in self-harm and suicide. Again, we're ready for that. We work with our partner agencies. We work with third-party sectors, all sorts of charities and support services, and we make sure that message gets out amongst the public when we're dealing with these people who are at a time of crisis. So in terms of the mental health part of it, yes, there is a slight increase, I guess, just looking at it on a week-to-week basis. However, that wouldn't be unusual for the time of year. Does that answer your question around mental health?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, thank you.
In terms of ASB neighbour disputes, yes, there has been an increase around neighbour disputes. We've been given some more funding through the government with the tier 4 lockdown. We was given a pot of cash. That's gone out to, well, it funds lots of things, but we've put on 4 extra officers per evening on 8-hour shifts out to deal with what we call Operation Biome Patrols, which are those COVID patrols, basically. Now, that includes ASB in the street, ASB in the area, and neighbour disputes caused by COVID, as well as the general day-to-day neighbour disputes. There's not been a massive rise in it. There is more neighbour complaining around neighbour, so they'll to police, but that's not escalating very often into direct conflict between neighbour and neighbour. Okay. So we're really business as usual to a degree. We're working really closely with the ASB teams, CPOs, all the very relevant teams within Ashfield District Council as well to provide that best service at the front end. And again, going back to what we said right at the beginning, we're doing some brilliant work with Teresa's teams on the back end of that. Your final question around Papplewick, that area, as long as I've been involved in policing, comes and goes as an area of ASB issues. They'll come there, we'll come and do some work on that area, they'll disappear, they'll go somewhere else for a bit, and after a period of time, they'll come back. Yeah. I'd say at the moment, you're in their back cycle. Now that you raised it with me, I'll have a chat with the beat team. They're on tomorrow. I'll make sure it's on their radar and they can get amongst that and hopefully disrupt them a bit. I know at the weekend we had off-road bike operations on both Saturday and Sunday across the district, but they did spend a lot of time in Papplewick and over at Felly and places like that to disrupt the off-road bike nuisance, which is, let's be honest, across the district.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you.
No problem.
Finally, I'd like to bring in Councillor Dale Grounds. Now, Councillor Grounds represents the Kingsway estate and around Kirkby, and has been particularly active in working and advising retailers in and around Kirkby. So, Councillor Grounds.
Hi, Mark. Nice to meet you, mate.
Good to meet you.
My question is, throughout the pandemic, has there been much of an increase in homeless crimes around Ashfield?
Not really. In all honesty, so at the early stages of the pandemic, most of the homeless population and transient population were put into accommodation to sort of temper the impact around them. As a result of that, most of them was moved towards the city quite a lot because that's where the accommodation was for them, and we've not seen a massive amount return. Those who have returned, they've engaged well, they've been well met, predominantly by the Ashfield District Council teams. We have very little impact with them unless it comes to a criminal element. I think there's 1 or 2 we've had to arrest over the last couple of months, but certainly nothing to suggest that there's an increase in crime from homeless people.
Okay, Councillor Grounds, anything else?
No, that's fantastic, and keep up the great work, mate.
No, thank you.
Okay, does any of the panel members, as a result of the answers from Inspector Dixon, want to ask any further questions? Okay. I've just got a couple, Matt, if that's okay. One's more of a statement, and then the other's a question. Firstly, you know, one of the great frustrations for myself is to meet local residents, and then talking about high levels of crime and antisocial behaviour. And I refer you to an incident on reports or alleged reports of crimes in the Garden Lane area of Sutton Ashfield. It was only after we investigated that we found out that there was very rarely any crime reported to the police. Now, I know you haven't got a crystal ball, and I've explained that to residents. I was hoping that you would reiterate my call for anyone who witnesses crime or suspects crime to ring Police 101, because obviously there's only a certain amount that you can do unless residents work with you. So that's the first one. Second one is not a day goes by. I mean, more often than not, I'm on Facebook because that's one of the main ways that residents complain to me. Not a day goes by these days without comedy, great tweets and Facebook posts from your social media team. They've been superb. I'd just like to ask you about Operation Reacher, and just to ask you to give us a few highlights of that so far and what the plans are for the future. Thank you, Inspector Dixon.
Right then, so I'm going to be a little bit rude for 2 seconds, just while I start up one of our databases, because I might be able to give you some figures which you may find quite interesting, basically. So going back to your first question, just while I'm loading this up, it is extremely important that people report things to us through 101 if it is a crime and it's there, it's happening, and it's been and gone, there's no immediate risk. If there's an immediate threat or risk to serious harm or serious injury and the offenders are on scene, then 999. In terms of just providing us with information, I would suggest one of two ways: either through the Ashfield MPT inbox, which you guys have got access to. Please feel free to put that out to the public. We are big advocates of that. It's absolutely fantastic for us. It's a really quick, easy way for people to get in touch with us and give us that information. It gives us a means of getting back. I think one of the biggest frustrations for the public, and it's a frustration that I share with them, is the 101 system. It does take a while to get through, unfortunately, and I think sometimes that can put people off. So if you are giving us information or sharing information and not reporting a crime, use the email system. It would be my recommendation. But yeah, definitely, I'd echo your calls there, David.
Yeah. Just to let members know, Inspector Dixon, that and I use that email address constantly, and it's ashfieldnpt@nottinghamshire.pnn.police.uk, but I'll put it in our regular COVID briefing for not just the panel, but also all council members as well, just to remind them of that, Mark.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And again, I'm more than happy that goes out to the public. So to give you an example, we'll use Garden Lane, prime example, where myself and David had a bit of communication around an issue. We asked that the main person who was suffering report that into us. They did. They was able to provide us some really good information. We could then go back and feed into that. And it was all done by the email. It wasn't done by 101. And as a result of that, we could put some proactive operations in the area. It resulted in 2 warrants, which we executed, and some really good sneaky covert patrols where we arrested a couple of drug dealers on the street. As a result, that resident is, well, I think it's fair to say you'll have a better understanding than I will, David, because you'll have spoken to her more, but she's absolutely ecstatic about that result.
Funny enough, she emailed me about it, and she was, yeah. So I'd like to thank, well, not just her, but also all the residents. Yeah, anyway, I don't want to be selfish about that and talk about issues in my area, but it's certainly welcome, and it's certainly quieter residents, aren't we? So, with regards to the second one about, we were talking about Operation Reacher.
Yeah, so Operation Reacher then, it's a proactive team. They're basically a 4th MPT team. So you've got the Sutton Beat team, Cateby Beat team, Hucknall Beat team, who cover their specific areas. And then Operation Reacher is an overarching team who are a proactive unit who will work across the whole area, basically. It's a sergeant and 7 PCs, as well as a PCSO acting in support. It launched on the 5th of October this year after some really, really good work that the team carried out, or similar teams carried out, in Bestwood and then into Gedling. It's rolled across all 12 areas. It's under my direct command, the Ashfield team, and we are probably the top performing in the force at the moment. So to give you some I'm not a big fan of facts and figures and statistics because I find them a little bit boring, but these are actually worthwhile. So since October the 5th, when the team launched, we've had 45 arrests purely from that team. That doesn't include the arrests from the other team, doesn't include the arrests from Response, CID, any other team. That is purely from that proactive team of 1 sergeant and 7 officers. We've prosecuted 24 traffic offences. We've done 18 magistrates warrants. We've seized 15 illegal cars, 2 motorbikes. We've had 21 drug seizures. We've done 175 stop searches, and we recovered 5 weapons off the street in 2 months. We're making an impact. Is the summary on the back of that? Yes, there was a fair bit of investment, and a lot of that did come from the public purse have dipped into it. It is a fantastic operation. It is here to stay. It's not going to be going away anytime soon. We're doing some really, really good work with the council. Again, we're doing some really, really interesting joint working. I know Teresa came out with the team and did a bit of knife crime work. The team do literally anything and everything we need. So tonight they're out doing road traffic operations. We do knife crime stop search, and they work predominantly with one of the local beat teams. So tonight they're out in Sutton. Earlier in the week they're out in Hucknall doing some work around Hucknall. 4 or 5 days ago they were out in Kirkby doing some cracking work in Kirkby, making some arrests. So they are out and about, and they're doing some really, really, really good stuff. Longer term plan, team will likely grow, I would have thought, given the successes they're having. Again, it is there. It's there for us to use. It's a tactic available to me. I want to send them where I'm going to get best bang for buck. Tell me where the problem is. We'll use them. We'll get them sent to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now, before we move on to the next item, I am aware we're taking a lot of your time up, Inspector Dixon, but are there any officers of the council that would just like to say a few words? So, Teresa Hodgkinson, please.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair. Welcome, Mark, to the Scrutiny panel. I think you've got off quite lightly there, but I do echo your sentiments, Mark. I think there's been a significant change with the partnership working with Ashfield and the police and the wider partnership. I think the relationships have really strengthened, and we're getting some really good outputs from that working partnership. Yeah, you're quite right. I've been out with the Reach team. It was very exciting. I think for the future, one of the things that we're really interested in from a council point of view is the community work that you'll be doing with the Reach team. And obviously because of COVID at the moment, that's quite restricted. But when I was out with the officers, they were talking about how they're going to interact with, the youth and the children in doing diversionary activities, such as working with football. So it'd be really good to start, once we start coming out from the pandemic, we can start looking at that community work, because I think it'll be really valuable. I've seen this morning as well that we made the news on BBC.
Yeah,
it looked like the council office this morning. I could see in the background all the council officers. So it's always good when you're making the news with some of the positives. So I think when you talk about leading in that, we regularly getting some comms from the work that's happening within the team, which has been very effective. I really welcome the recent inclusion of the police in the scrutiny review of the community protection team. I think they had a real good input into that, and that's seen some very strong, valid recommendations about the future of the service and how that works with the police and the investment that will be made. And again, welcome the training that you're doing with the team, particularly with the new CPO officers. And I understand that that's going to be something that we're embedding into a training program. It's not just a short-term thing. We're looking at doing training from a regular point of view. So really, it's no questions from me. It's just really welcoming the work that's happening, the joint working, and actually seeing a difference it's making out there in the communities. Just coming on to the question about Idlewells, I'm sure Trevor may want to comment on that, but we too have an excellent working relationship with Chloe and the team at Idlewells. And I'm sure there's some joint work we can do there, whether it's a joint letter to Idlewells or Trevor just, going along with the CPOs and looking at some way of having, whether it's the COVID information officers or CPOs working with the idle wells to look at see if we can make some improvements with the masks and the enforcement in that area. So welcome, Mark. I think you've only been here since May, and it's had a real impact, and may long, you know, the relationship continue, that we start working together.
Thank you, Teresa.
Thank you.
You know, we're going to let you go in a second, but it'd be remiss of me not to mention your predecessor, because I know that Craig Hall, who's moved on to other things now, started a lot of this work. And just to say that, you know, as a local councillor, you've certainly continued that, and the momentum is fantastic. And if anyone was wondering why I brought up Operation Reacher in a COVID meeting, I think that it's been a reaction from the police, because as Mark said, they went back, they stripped the bones and went back to community policing during COVID. But, you know, this is a reaction, and people, you know, baddies in places like Sutton, been in Selston or Jacksdale or Kirkby, Hucknall, need to watch out, because these guys will have them. Councillor Grounds, is there anything you wanted to bring in? Sorry, you just indicated.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to ask when it was my chance. Mark, has there been much of an increase in youth crime and hassle with youth during the pandemic? And what's your plans on engaging with them in the future?
Right then. So, how long have you got? Is the simple answer to that. To a degree, there has been an increase in youth crime. That's probably more because they're a bit bored, to be perfectly honest, rather than serious criminality. In terms of engagement in the future, then, that is a broad subject. I could probably take up a few hours of your time on that one, because we've got a lot planned and we are doing a lot. I'll give you some of the key points though. So, as part of the criminality, I'll stick with criminality to start with. We've introduced here what's called the NSD, Neighbourhood Safeguarding and Disruption Meeting. That's targeting under 18s who are at risk of criminalisation and exploitation by significant criminals, basically. We've had some brilliant work on that. So when I started up, we had 4 lads who were on that cohort. One was involved in a firearms discharge, another was involved in a shooting, and another was actively running drugs around. Through some of the great work we've done on that, and a lot of that is joint working, we've managed to get 3 of them off that cohort. The 4th just doesn't want to play ball. He still wants to be a bad lad. So he's getting targeted, and we just keep turning him over and arresting him and harassing him and making life very uncomfortable for him. That cohort has now got more bodies going onto it, because there's other areas, other people we're identifying as potentially being involved in criminality at a young age. One of the recent introductions I brought into the area is the Youth Early Intervention Scheme, where anybody under the age of 18 who's arrested with a weapon or drugs which we believe to be in possession for supply, they have an early engagement, and that early engagement takes 4 strands. MPT go and speak to them first, so the local beat team. The SEIO, so the schools officer, will then go and engage. They will then have a further engagement from someone in the community, which will generally be someone through the MASH panels or someone dictated by them. And then the 4th visit will come from our reach team, who will basically give them a tap on the shoulder and say, we're aware of you, we'll turn you over if we see you on the streets. Don't get involved in criminality. We've had so far 9 people coming through that panel. From them 9 people, 3 now keeping well away from crime, be it because we've been able to engage them early and say, look, you're getting exploited, or be it, actually, we don't want to get criminalised. So we're having some positive results of that. I've only been running that for about 3-4 weeks. Sorry, a little bit longer than that, probably coming into about 2 months now. That's probably been running. So that's really, really positive. And that feeds into the Ashfield Risk Management meeting, which happens every 2 weeks. And we feed that into CPOs, ASB officers. Every man and his dog basically gets a bit of that. And then they can then go out and have a bit more targeted interaction. And again, it will play a part of OpSafe going further forward. So from a disruption point of view, and from a criminality point of view, we're doing some really, really good work on that side of it. From the engagement point of view, we've got some brilliant, brilliant schemes coming up. So Teresa touched on the youth projects, what we've got running. So we've got an alignment with, I think it's called Kick It, which is like a charity around football. Notts Forest are linked in, Notts County are linked in. We're running some brilliant classes around that and some really good sessions around that. We've linked in with the schools next year when we're able to sort of get amongst the schools in the better weather, we're going to have the Reacher Cup, which is going to be an inter-school competition around sports, different sporting activities. There's all sorts of different engagement activities, both at early intervention level at MPT, but also with the Reach teams as well. So we've got a vast array aimed at children and youth, be it disruption, safeguarding and support, or engagement, keep away from crime. Around about March, April time, we'll probably launch in the cadets, police cadets. So there's a scheme in place at the moment, but at the moment we can't really get it out there because we can't have meetings and such. But as them restrictions come off, there will be more opportunities engagement. The longer term plan is that young people today will be joining Nottinghamshire Police in the future to support their own local community. That's the longer term aim around it.
Thank you.
So that's just a really, really quick summary, believe it or not.
It would be interesting actually if because I know that you only came in May and you certainly made an impact, Inspector Dix. It would be great actually if you know, when things settle down, if we could set up a meeting with each of the 4 areas with yourself, and we could do it online. For example, I've just had a message from one of the county councillors who represents the Selston division, Councillor David Martin, who's continually raising issues of antisocial behaviour, youth antisocial behaviour in Jacksdale. But maybe that's something that we could look at set up when things settle down. Unless anyone's got any other questions, we're going to let Mark get on with his duties and continue leading the team. And there's that many operations going on. It's like carry on matron out there. But I'd like to finally just bring in the Chief Executive of Ashfield District Council, Carol Cooper-Smith, just to make some final comments before we let Mark go. Carol.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not going to repeat what Teresa's said, because she was very articulate in it. I think one of the things that has really worked with having Mark here is the co-location, having the police in the hub downstairs with some of the antisocial behaviour team and the CPOs. It means we can share intelligence a lot easier, because basically people can just toddle over to somebody's desk and talk before it gets any more formal. So one example is bad lad exclusion order on particular estate. We get a phone call saying they've been spotted. Antisocial behaviour officer goes down to see the police, and it's possible for that lad to get nicked straight away. And it's immediate like that. And all sorts of joint works going on at the minute between the council and the police. And thank Mark for driving that forward since he's been in post, with obviously full cooperation of the council. And it's been of enormous positive benefit having the police on the ground floor. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Now, I did say we'd let you go, Mark. Did Councillor Shaw want to raise anything? Dave, sorry, I missed that. So, okay, Councillor Shaw, final word from Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, David. Thanks for letting me back in, Chair. Just a quick one to Mark. Have you seen any increase, or is there any propensity of crime against homeless people in the district at all? And if so, what have we done about it?
No, there hasn't, basically. Very few homeless people have been coming back to the area. Those who haven't reported any crime. Again, most of that would sit with Ashfield District Council and some of their officers who do a lot of that work, and that early engagement. But given the tight lines of communication we have, I'd have expected we'd have heard of it, and we haven't. So there doesn't seem to be an issue around that.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, Dave. All right. Thank you very much, Inspector Dixon. And, we look forward to setting up those meetings and once everything settles down. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Okay.
Just a quick one for you, Dave, actually, on the back of that, sorry, just before one of the things we are looking at doing in the new year is having a bit of a roadshow where all 4 teams will be there, as well as some of our specialist units. And that will be an open invite to all councillors to be able to attend. I'll give you a quick brief around what we're doing in the area and what that looks like. And then you'll be able to go and have a chat with all 4 teams and various other areas, including ARVs, road policing. We'll be able to put on a decent interactive day, shall we say.
Excellent. Thank you. And we'll look forward to that. Okay. Thanks very much. Also, we're going to move on. Teresa, did you want to... Oh, you're saying goodbye. Right. I'll say goodbye as well. Thanks. Thanks a lot. Okay. Thank you for your patience, officers there. But I hope that you found that really useful. And you know, as the panel said, stated the last time, you know, that crime and antisocial behaviour is not just a problem at present, but it's also it will also have an impact on our future, i.e. our recovery, i.e. regeneration. I get great confidence that things are moving in the right direction, and I wanted you to see that. And I especially welcome the multi-agency approach. I've used that word about 15 times today, but you know, the work between Ashfield District Council and the work with the police is paying dividends. Right, talking of sort of tackling problems and stuff, I'd like to move on to an update and discussions regarding the COVID support team, or the COVID information officer team. Tonight, we're very lucky to have Trevor Middleton, who's our town centres and markets manager, and Ian Rotherham to provide the panel with an update on the work of the team, the current issues and any progress made. And before I bring them in just to speak, can I just say that you know, Jim and I, Councillor Blagden and I, were on tour today in Hucknall, and honest to God, it was so funny to see Jim dead excited on that pedal in Pigginscroft car park. I've never seen Jim wash his hands so much, but the way that you turned that around, that was a request from this panel, and the way that you've turned that round has been phenomenally good and sends a clear message that this council is serious about, you know, listening to people's concerns. What can I say about Ian Rotherham? What an impact, Ian, and I've never met you before, so hi. What an impact you've had on this council. A couple of meetings ago, you were by yourself working with Trevor and trying to get around. I don't know how you managed it. You know, you must have been working 20 hours a day, and you've now taken on a number of COVID information officers, and tonight was really an opportunity for yourselves to not just talk about the COVID information officers, but also about the town centres. So is it all right to bring yourself in first, Ian, so you can talk about the work that the COVID information officers have been doing all across the district? Ian.
Okay, thank you, Chair, for asking me. Yes, well, what would you like to know?
Well, I mean, for example, I mean, it was at this meeting, I think it was 3 meetings ago, where I expressed reservations about what at the time was called COVID marshals. And I think some members of this panel felt that there would be more harm than good. And I don't believe that that's been the case. In fact, quite the opposite. Reading your weekly reports, it's very, very clear that your team are making an excellent impact. I'd just like to just give the panel an overview of what the COVID information officers do. I don't want statistics or figures, but what they actually do and the difference they're making, you feel, in this district.
Well, I think one of the things, if we start right at the beginning, one of the things we decided talking to Trevor was that we'd engage rather than be seen as part of the enforcement. Really wanted to talk to businesses and help, and being, you know, seen as somebody putting a hand around the shoulder, and rather than somebody there as part of the enforcement team. And I think the response from the retailers has been, you know, very, very good. We're now getting to the point where we're building up a good relationship with all the retailers. You know, there's very few where we've had any sort of conflict at all. And I've got a team now of three girls out on the street, and you know, they're all intelligent people. They're not, you know, just your ordinary labourers or anything of that nature. They're good, intelligent people, and they like building a relationship with the businesses. And it's now got to the point where some of the businesses come out of the shops if they walk past to ask them to come back and have a chat, and just so they can update them on what's been happening around their business. And it has, I personally feel it's been really positive for the district.
Thank you, Ian. I'd like to just bring Trevor in, so Trevor can give an overview from his perspective. Because Trevor, how has the COVID information officer team made your life easier, and what impact do you think they've had?
I think, in a way, I think they've just been an extension of how we'd worked consistently with our retailers. I think it's given as an extension of how the authority wants to approach town centres and our local, independents, and also the multinationals. We've always wanted to embrace and sort of build relationships. That's always been the key driver for it, build relationships. And I think having a team which has got, the focus of the country and the focus of all our towns is now around pandemic. And I think it gave us, if you can say that, it gave us an opportunity to engage. And it wasn't just engaging about how we can make our shops COVID safe, because if they're COVID safe, they're safe for the public. But it's also, we're engaging about shop local, we're engaging about the grant funding and all other opportunities. Today they've brought something up, some activities where we feel the shop's been selling stuff which they shouldn't be selling, so we brought that to police, and it's given that contact, like Ian said, where they actually people engaging with us and engaging with us in a mutual thing. We're not coming with epaulets saying we're Ashfield District Council, we're coming, look, we can help you, and if we can't help you, we know others who can. And I think that's the extension really we brought to the fore, and how Ian's worked the team, and as in we were talking yesterday about a shopkeeper who's she's trying to expand, and the first thing what the team were thinking about is how can we get contact details to this lady. It wasn't thinking retail's really struggling and why would we be doing that. It's saying, well, how can we help this lady? And it were really that's what I'm getting. It's the positivity of, even in these very difficult times, and retail are struggling, it's very fragile. It's just makes you wonder that with the support we can give them, hopefully we can get them through this difficult period.
Thank you, Trevor. I feel like I'm sat next to Big Ben. I don't know if anyone else did that. Right, so I'd just like to go through members of the panel now. And I'm sure that one of the things that came up at the last meeting was that we needed to improve the way that things were communicated. And so Councillor Blagden and I have been doing regular reports to you, and within that report, within those regular COVID reports are the reports that Ian's been compiling, which he does every Friday, and we'll continue to send that. Thank you, Ian, for continuing to do that. It's greatly appreciated. Councillor Smallridge, have you got any questions for either Ian or Trevor?
No, I did have a query from somebody who was having a problem. It was a sweet shop, and I actually didn't know what to do, so I passed it over to you. The lady phoned me, she got her grant, and her shop is open, so thank you.
Thank you. I think that's more of a as well to our next speaker, Pete Hudson, as well. But the way that the COVID information officers have not just been, as you said, Trevor, just kicking down doors, and there's not been any of that. That's the reason why they haven't got a uniform, so they're more approachable, and they've been handing out information on various things to retailers, and it's gone down. It really has gone down a storm. So I'm glad that lady at the sweet shop got the what I did speak to her, John, and she kept me on the phone for 45 minutes. It's a good job I've not got a pay as you go phone these days. Councillor Walters, is there anything that you would like to ask Trevor or Ian? No. Councillor Blagden?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, hello, Trevor. Our response to the COVID and how we've managed Tier 3 is really going well. I mean, nobody can argue with that. I want to look forward, Trevor, to the summer, when hopefully we're getting back to some kind of normality. What plans have we got, or have you got, to kickstart businesses in Ashfield in Hucknall, i.e. farmers markets, summer festivals? I think we've got to start planning now, hopefully kickstart businesses in the summer.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. I think we're looking really, at the moment we're doing a shop small promotion, which is, we didn't say shop local, we wanted shop small because we really wanted to promote our independent retailers. I'm taking that up to Christmas, probably to the new year. And then in the new year, I want to do something like thank you for shopping local and encourage, because January, February, March is going to be a very, they call January Kipper month in market terms, because nobody shopped then. They've done the shopping at Christmas. So I want to run something into the spring regarding shop local, and I'm thinking about doing something where we've done the Q dots where it was about keeping social distance. I've been working with our comms team about getting something out like shop safe, shop small, or shop safe, shop local. So we're going to get something like that out through the Reopening Our Street Safely Fund. I've tasked our markets team to, and I'm meeting them again next Tuesday for I'm setting an action plan in place for both the indoor market and the outdoor markets of how we can look at reinvigorating the markets through the spring and summer. Maybe the main months really are from April to September. So if we can bring in some community markets, etc. I've given it to them, tasked them to look at that, and we'll start putting some details down next week. We are working with we've been approached by Lincoln Green Brewery regarding doing something like a food festival in Hucknall in the summer. And we are working on that. It's very, very early days. And I say we are conscious about COVID, but that has got good ground. And I think by reaching out, we like to, if we can make it community-wise, and that's how they reach out in Hucknall for that, to get businesses and ourselves working together, it gives that more ownership. They've probably got better contacts than we've got in certain areas, because food's always been a difficulty in Ashfield, really, to get that resilience in there. So, yeah, we have got plans afoot for it, and also how we can get our traders sort of making people aware what we've got. I've got town maps for each town. So we reinvigorated the information officers are looking at our town maps again. So it like lists each trader in list. So we can give those out. I gave them out to new housing estates last year, and I'll start again. So you go and show them, you can see what we've got in each town. We're also looking through the Reopening Our Streets Fund. I'm looking at whether I can do some footfall counting, because I think it's quite a good time now to look where we are now, and where, if we can put things in place, and there's lots of investment going into our towns, we can see where we're reaching to, and also how, when we do put an event on, because unfortunately we lost the Christmas events this year, and Hucknall Christmas event, you're probably looking 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 people. Now that's a finger in the air sort of measure, and if I can get some way of formally measuring what we've got, you can build on, because 5,000 people coming into a town and stopping 20 minutes that's a quick nip. 5,000 people stopping in a town for 2 hours, 3 hours, you've got to spend there, and then you can start developing that and keeping, it's a dwell time really we need to look at. And I think that's when you start getting sophisticated in how your towns work, and also how they're not working. We're looking at, we've got the pay by phone brought into car parks. That's working quite well. We've got a good uptake on that. We're promoting that again as well, because it means people haven't got to use the machines, and also it takes that onus if you haven't got change, etc. And you might stop in the town longer. So yeah, we've got this hopefully, I'd like to say there's good plans afoot how we can look, but it's the January, February, March is the crucial time. If we can get over that little hump there, when everybody's done the shopping and they are aware that our local shops are still trading, we can look into the spring and summer after that.
Thank you, Trevor. And
all good news. Thank you.
Okay, and maybe because we're discussing next year's work plan, Jim, maybe when that comes up shortly in this meeting, maybe that'd be something that we could suggest, that we actually look specifically at the markets, because don't forget, this is the COVID recovery. This is about recovery, isn't it?
That's right.
I certainly welcome. I've spoke to Trevor about the footfall counters before, and I think that's an excellent idea, because finger in the air estimates doesn't attract investment, doesn't attract sponsorship, whereas actually giving these people facts would certainly help. The next councillor I'm going to bring in is Councillor Kevin Rostance. Just for Councillor Rostance represents Hucknall. Sorry, I should have mentioned that, Ian, just to introduce the councillors. Sorry, Councillor Rostance.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Chairman. No questions for Trevor. No, Trevor's a real people person, and he does a great job locally, and he's well respected. So keep up the good work, Trevor, and I wish you a Merry Christmas and hope to see you in the new year.
Thank you very much, and same to you. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Grounds. So Ian, Councillor Grounds represents Kirkby and the Kingsway Estate. Councillor Grounds.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, firstly, I just want to say well done for the great work you've been doing throughout the pandemic. I speak to a lot of businesses around Ashfield, and they always mention Trevor and how easy he is to approach and get help. And secondly,
Dale.
And secondly, regarding complaints from pensioners at the Idlewell Centre about the chairs being removed, is there any plans of them going back into place anytime soon, or have we got to wait till after Tier 3?
I think that's a good point. I took note from Inspector Dickinson and also what Teresa said. I'll contact Chloe regarding this, because I think it's not the first time we've heard about the mask issue with the indoor market. I say an issue in concerning in the indoor in the marketplace, and I can raise it with Chloe. I wonder if I can do something on Low Street regarding raising awareness about wearing masks. So I think we can. I'm going to take that on, and I can take that back, Councillor. I think there's some work we could do on Low Street regarding wearing masks. To be honest with you,
yeah.
And there's chairs we can look at.
Yeah. Also about seats being put back into place. Is there any plan to go back into place?
Yes, I'll ask the question. Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Thank you.
So if you could ask that and then maybe feed that back, and we'll make sure that comes back to you as soon as possible. Final one, staying in Hucknall, is Councillor Dave Shaw. Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Trevor, you mentioned earlier pay by phone at the car parks. Some of my older residents and the people that use the car parks don't have these smartphones. Are we going to still be able to actually use the machines in the future and I can say that with confidence in the future, that we will not be taking the machines out altogether and it will be solely only by phone? And secondly, Ian, this is one for Ian as well. Have you had any resistance from businesses regarding the COVID restrictions and the implementation of any legislation that may be in place, such as resistance of putting the signage up or anything like that? Thank you.
You want to answer first, Trevor?
Yeah, can do, Ian. Yes, no problem. Yeah, regarding the machines, there's no intention to take them out. We're just offering it's choice, really. We didn't have the choice before, so there's no intention to take the machines out. It's just giving a different opportunity for people to use, who have got the app, can use it. It's choice we're offering, really.
Okay, Ian.
From a business point of view, initially we did have the skepticals that didn't want to wear a mask and didn't see why they should wear a mask. But to be honest with you, I think we're all over that now, and businesses, they're engaging now, and we're seeing a very good reception from businesses wearing masks and realising that they've got to work safely to be able to be there after this pandemic's over.
And I think it's important to note as well, because it was something that Councillor Wilkinson mentioned at the last meeting, her worry that we were just concentrating on our town centres, Hucknall, Kirkby and Sutton. Ian, what's the response been like to the COVID information officers in places like Huffwaite or Stanton Hill or off the beaten track? Are they surprised to have received support from you?
I think they have been. Initially, they were surprised to see anybody from the council out there, because they probably do feel a little bit off the beaten track. But we have been several times now to all these smaller villages, and we're beginning to be known, and we're getting good engagement from the shops. And I think that's been appreciated. And they appreciate Ashfield Council for doing it. I did have one comment today. It's a shop in Hucknall that's also got a shop in Derby, and they were saying how well that Ashfield have done a good job, and they've had absolutely no contact whatsoever from Derby City Council. So, I think we are doing a good job, and thanks for your help on that.
Thank you, Ian. Before I bring in the officers, just to tackle the question of the payment machine, I know there's definitely not, but I mentioned before I introduced Ian and Trevor that they turn around these hand sanitizers, and as I say, we're making sure, because there was a concern expressed by this panel that directly led to the request to have a look at doing this, and I think that we provided a very sensible solution. I don't know if you can see this properly. Can you see that? That's how delighted we all were today to be at the one at Piggins Croft car park, and it sends a clear message that we care about the residents, we care about the health. We don't, some people just say, oh yeah, just use the internet. It's like Barclays going from Sutton and Hucknall, and Barclays turning around and saying it's okay, they can go online. I'm saying, yeah, say that to me, 83-year-old Auntie Edith. And it's a similar approach here, and we're showing them providing a practical, safe alternative, and that is in no small part to the way that Trevor and his team turned that around. So on behalf of the panel, thank you. Is there anything the officers would like to add to either Trevor or Ian? Teresa?
Sorry, just a quick one from me. As the panel knows, thank you, Chair, Trevor's very modest. And I think the panel already have made some quite strong recommendations that Trevor and the team's taken forward already. So just to add to one of your questions around from some of the councillors about what support will be given to small businesses and town centres, Trevor's already working on and looking at enhancing the reward and recognition scheme that he currently runs within the town centres. He's also not forgetting the Towns Fund is significantly involved in what the physical regeneration and economic regeneration will do to the towns, particularly obviously in Sutton and Kirkby, and the investment that will be made there and the impact that it'll have, hopefully, you know, to kickstart the economic development of those town centres. And not forgetting one of the, probably one of the things that the panel have asked to enhance is the town centre working groups that are already established through Discover Ashfield. And I know Trevor's already looking at reinvigorating those town centre groups to look at taking on the recovery from the pandemic and linking that to the economic recovery plan that the panel's also endorsed through Cabinet. So I think a lot of the actions that you've put forward and recommendations that Trevor and the team are already working on, it's not, you know, I think this scrutiny panel is not just playing lip service, it is putting some valuable recommendations that you're already seeing. Just one example of the sanitisers that's going into the town centres, and also some of the other initiatives that the council are investing in, such as the 2 hours free parking that will continue. So whilst we brought that in and free parking through the pandemic, the council have made a real commitment to making sure that we can open up our town centres as best we can and give you know, facilities that are free to enable people to actually get into the town centres. So yes, a very modest man, Trevor, but you're doing a fantastic job with the team. So I applaud you. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other, before I wrap up this section, is there any other officers that would like to speak? Well, thank you, Trevor, and Ian, you're very welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting. I know you've been partying today at the Chad Awards, haven't you, Trevor? So, you know, you may feel the need to log off. I wanted specifically, Ian, for you to come to this meeting, firstly to welcome you to the authority, but just to express how much our panel appreciate the work. And I know your job has changed but you know, your team have kept on top of legislation. You've provided an absolutely valuable resource. And I mentioned before, I joked about, I think there's 3 Trevor Middletons knocking about, but you certainly made his life easier, and it's greatly appreciated. And we'd be really grateful if you could pass our thanks onto your team. Are they called Charlie's Angels, did you say? You know,
I'll tell them that.
Really appreciated, and this panel makes a number of recommendations to the council's cabinet and suggestions. And one of the things that we will be doing is highlighting the excellent work that yourself and the team have done. So thank you very much. And as I say, before I bring in
Thank you, Chair.
Pete Hudson, thank you. Before I bring in Pete Hudson, I did forget something before. Apologies to Councillor Blagden, but Councillor Blagden had provided a brief report on the current situation with COVID across the district. So with your indulgence, before I bring in Pete, if it's okay, can I bring Councillor Blagden for his brief report? Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I'm pleased to present this latest overview of the COVID situation in Ashfield and across Nottinghamshire, Chairman. Overall, Nottinghamshire has a rate of infection of 145.5 cases per 100,000 people. This is slightly lower than the national average of 151 cases. Broken down by the districts and boroughs, 5 of the 7 districts and boroughs now have rates lower than the national average. These are Ashfield, Broxtowe, Gedling, Mansfield and Rushcliffe. The number of COVID-19 cases recorded in Ashfield is continuing to fall, which is great news. Week on and week after week, with our district's epidemic curve on a downward trend. Ashfield's rate per 100,000 people peaked on November the 2nd at 358.8 cases, but has been progressively decreasing over the past 5 weeks. Data accurate to December the 5th shows our area rate now stands at 135.2 cases per 100,000 people, below the England average, and is beginning to flatten out. The latest COVID-19 report, according to the government data dashboard, shows that there were 173 new cases recorded in the week ending December the 5th, whilst a week earlier this figure was 240. Since the start of the pandemic, 56% of cases recorded in Ashfield were among women, while 44% were among men. Whilst this is good news, we're not confident that Nottinghamshire will come out of Tier 3 lockdown next week. The council leader, Jason Drozostra, was called into the government meeting to review the current regional figures. A decision on a review of the tiered system is due by the middle of next week. The suggestion is the country will remain, or the county will remain in Tier 3. Jason was presented the most current stats and all the movement capacity stats and age group stats as they stand. He was given no opportunity to speak, as 50 council leaders were in attendance. They were dictated to for 24 minutes of the meeting, leaving only 6 minutes for questions. They've made no indication at all about the tier changes on the 16th. The stuff they did say was that the data they will be using on the 16th will be at least 2 to 4 days old because of how long it takes to get the system data through. This means we won't be making a decision on the 16th based on the most accurate data. That's the current situation, Chairman. Thanks for letting me do the report.
Thank you, Jim, and apologies for bringing you in slightly late. I am aware of the time, so we're going to move swiftly on and introduce you to Pete Hudson. Pete is the Section 151 officer at Ashfield District Council, which means he looks after the finances and the revenues and benefits. And he's here today to talk about the business grants and the discretionary grant scheme. Very successful again. I'll let Pete go through the figures. But it's another sterling job, and maybe if it's okay with Pete, if you could just touch on what the situation is with regards to Tier 3 lockdown. We've had a few questions from especially the hospitality sector, including wet-led pubs. And thank you, Pete.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, with your indulgence, what I'd like to do first of all is present the current position, which refers to the existing grants, which cover the period from mid-October through to the 2nd of December. So we have had 975 applications from businesses. We have paid out 675 businesses an amount of £2.324 million to date. 50 of the applications we've received have been declined because they didn't meet the eligibility criteria. So that leaves approximately 250 businesses to still be evaluated. Probably about half of those we've had to go back to for additional information in order to complete the evaluation before we're able to make the payments, because we have to undergo full due diligence, as you would expect. And then we've also identified that a number of applications are duplicates. So although I started the statement by saying 975 applications, that number will actually reduce when we sift out the duplicates. So it's a significant amount of money we've paid out. Within that, it's both the local restrictions grants and the discretionary grants. So where a business has got a rateable value, it will qualify for the local services restriction grant if it's in an affected sector. It will also qualify for a discretionary grant on top of that, and we've been making those payments. But independent to that, we've got businesses that are run from home or from rented properties where they're not paying business rates. So for those businesses, we've been making payments through the discretionary arm. And I can tell you that in terms of those small businesses, which are things like taxi drivers, hairdressers that rent a chair in a salon, tattooists that have got part of a building that might be occupied by other businesses as well, the small things, and then the home workers. So far, we've paid out 112 of those businesses within Ashfield, and that's to date. So there's still a piece of work to do. We're still actively working through the remaining applications, but we're getting on the top side of it now, and we're hoping to have all of the applications dealt with by the end of next week that we currently have. So that's the position on the existing grants. So then we're into a situation where we have gone into the new Tier 3 system, and new grants are payable from the 2nd of December through to the 16th of December. Now, we've been waiting for the information coming through from government, and I was on a call yesterday with Bays, where we were given some additional information, which we will be uploading that information onto our website. It will be by no later than tomorrow. I think some of it might have gone on this evening, to be quite honest. And that details what businesses are going to be eligible for the new tier grants from the 2nd of December through to the 16th. Now, we'll be making those payments at the end of a 2-week period. The businesses will still have to apply for those grants, but it will be a far less complex and tortuous process, because effectively we have already got the business details. All we need them to do is, through a simple application form, confirm to us that they are still a going concern and they will be starting up their businesses as soon as the restrictions have been lifted. And secondly, that by accepting any further grants that they may be entitled to, they won't be breaching state aid regulations. So it's a lot less complex than the previous arrangement, where we were still having to collect all the information. So the information around the new grants goes onto the website tomorrow. We won't be able to make the payments straight away because we haven't yet had the funding from government, but we are assured that it will be imminent. So we were expecting a confirmation of the new level of grants that we would be getting today. It hasn't arrived, so I'm expecting that we might receive that money, that confirmation tomorrow, and hopefully the money by the beginning of next week.
Right.
I think that's probably as much as I can tell you, but I'm happy to take any questions from councillors if they have any.
Okay, just to explain to the panel, Pete mentioned a phone call with Base yesterday. What he was referring to was the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. So just to clear that up, we are a jargon-free zone, Pete.
Okay, sorry.
I know it's fine. I know how easy it is. Before I bring in the panel, because there's an enormous amount of work we keep hearing. We're bringing people that are real heroes on the ground. And before I bring in the panel, I'd just like to bring in the Chief Exec, Carol Cooper-Smith, just to talk a little bit about the complexity and how the council have actually, the work it's taken to make it as simple as possible. And just talk a tiny bit more, because Pete, like Trevor Middleton, is quite modest, but just to talk a little bit about the turnaround and the work from the from his team. Carol.
Thank you, Chair. Trevor, Ian and Pete are pulling off an absolute vast quantity of work at the minute with their teams. Ian and Trev must have undertaken around about 1,000 visits, if not more, at the minute. All of that takes huge amounts of time. They're doing absolutely the right thing, providing mentoring and support rather than enforcement. And they've been almost universally accepted by the retailers, because they see that we're there to help them and not to hammer them. So huge, vast quantities of work. It's not going away, and they do it with great amounts of positivity. And I thank members for their positive comments to the team. In terms of Pete and his team, we've had, as he says, 975 applications for business grants. All of those 975 applications have got paid. So it's not just a case of application comes in, we pay money out. We have to make sure that the applications are sound and that the people we're paying grant to qualify for the grant. And obviously that also involves a huge amount of work on top of the huge amount of work that Pete and his team did over the summer when we paid out about 22 million. So we hope that we're going to get more in terms of the what they're calling the wet-led pubs. Is that right, Pete? Wet-led, yeah. Pubs that just do drink, not food. And also new money regarding our tier 3 status. So it's not over yet. And we undertake wherever possible to pay grant to businesses within 3 working days, provided we've got all of the relevant information in. But, you know, please be aware, 975 applications, it's no mean feat getting the money out of the door in such a quick space of time. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Carol. And I think I'm looking at the time now, it's 8:25. And so what I thought we'd do before I bring the panel in is just give an opportunity for Teresa and Ruth to, if they want to say anything at this stage, and then we'll open it up to the panel and you can all take any questions that we've got as they come in. So Teresa, would you like to make any comments? Teresa Hodgkinson.
Well, given the opportunity, you know, I always like to have a few comments, especially when it comes to endorsement of officers. And, you know, Pete's the leader of, in relation to the business grants throughout the COVID pandemic, to be honest. But behind Pete, there is a magnificent amount of team effort. But Pete is the one that's leading from the front with this. So again, it's just echoing Carol's sentiments. And, you know, Pete's not only doing the day job and keeping the council in a really positive financial position, but he's also, you know, working tirelessly behind the scenes with and it is a wider team. I think I mentioned this maybe at the last panel, that when working together comes in, I think this is a really good example of how the council works together to be able to achieve a quick turnaround that benefits our business community. So again, hats off, Pete. Keep up the fantastic work.
Okay, is there anything you'd like to add, Ruth?
Thank you, Chair. I don't think there's much for me to really add today. Obviously, this week it's really been for me looking at what's going to happen in the weeks to come, certainly around the tier system. And Carol's been on a number of calls like myself, and we've had a fairly consistent message, I think, when we've been comparing notes. And it sounds like, I think, the briefing that the leader has given to Councillor Blagden is also consistent. So luckily, we all do appear to have had the right message today, or at least the same message. I think what's not clear yet is the second review period for the tier system is actually due to take place during Christmas week. And my understanding from our government information officer today was that we're not actually sure what's going to happen during Christmas week yet in terms of the review of the tiered system. So they're hoping to be able to give us information on that next week. Carol may have a bit more information that she may want to give in terms of the review. But I think Councillor Blagden made reference to the fact that it's going to be a consultation, but I don't think it's necessarily an active consultation. Oh, sorry. I always need to put 50 pence in my meter tonight. It keeps going up. Yeah, so I think it's not necessarily going to be a consultation that's active. I think we're largely going to be told the position, and it's not going to be a negotiated one. I think Carol probably has got a little bit more info that she wants to share as well.
Carol?
Carol?
Sorry, thanks, Teresa. Carol?
Oh, thank you. I want to confirm something that Councillor Blagden said quite strongly earlier on, which is this is not a negotiation. We will be told which tier we're in. There won't be any toing and froing and negotiating with local leaders. I mean, to be fair, by the time Ashfield Council entered a top tier last time, there was no negotiation with Councillor Zadrozny at that point. We were told we were going into a high tier, and that was the end of it. And we've been told likewise this time it's not up for negotiation, and it's good to hear that we've all got the same consistent message this week. Ruth and I have been in various meetings, and the leader, Councillor Zadrozny, has been in a ministerial meeting today with all of the other leaders from the East Midlands, and it sounds like we've all been told the same thing, which is good. I've been asked to attend a meeting, I think the 21st of December, so there will be meetings going on Christmas week. I honestly don't know what the upshot of those will be, but we've all been warned to be very cautious that they're not going to be moving people in and out of tiers. We've been told the Chief Medical Officer is taking a very cautious approach to tiering. And therefore, they're not really considering, unless in exceptional circumstances, that people will be moving. And all of these decisions will be taken at Secretary of State level, advising the Prime Minister, and the final decisions will be made by the Prime Minister. The first decision will be at the back end of next week, either Wednesday or Thursday next week. Chair, it's good to hear what Councillor Blagden said, because it squares exactly with what Ruth and I have been told this week in quite separate meetings. We've all got the same message. But I'd like to stress to members that there will be no negotiation on tiers. We will be told. Okay, so that's it. Like it or like it not. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. And I don't expect officers to comment on this. And as you know, I'm not political, but what Councillor Blagden said flies in the face of public statements from the MP for Ashfield, Lee Anderson, who seems to think that Jason managed to talk the government into increasing lockdown measures in Ashfield. But as I say, I don't want to be political. I'm now going to ask members of the panel to if they want to ask any questions to either Teresa, to Ruth, to Pete, or to Carol. Is there any? So I'll go through you in turn. Councillor Smallridge, John, is there any questions you've got? And if it's a specific question for an officer, if you name the officer, but if it's a general one, then if the officer could indicate who's best to pick it up. John?
A tradesman, such as a painter and decorator, working from home, who do they contact first for any help still available? That's a general question.
John, just to answer that, they can contact business.support@ashfield.gov.uk. If you take their details, alternatively, take their details and email them to me, I will get them over to the business support team. Is that the right answer, Pete?
Yeah, what I would add, Chair, is that for those businesses that have been affected by COVID that are home working, then they should have applied for a discretionary grant when the grant window was open, but it closed on the 29th of November. So that's now been surpassed. So there isn't that opportunity.
Ah, right.
Okay, but if you send me the details, John, either by email or text or carrier pigeon, I'll certainly look at it for you and see what advice that we can provide them. Councillor Walters, is there any questions that you'd like to ask? No, you're quite happy. Okay, Councillor Blagden. Mr. Consistent Message.
Thank you, Chairman. Just comments, really, Chairman. I'd like to thank Trevor and Ian for the forward-looking plans they've got. I really would, and a great job. I'd also like to thank Pete and his team. I'm just full of admiration for him. For a team that's coped through this COVID pandemic, are well there and made sure that all these businesses are supported, receive the money. It's just a magnificent effort. So well done to you, Pete, and all that team that's involved. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Shaw, is there any question or statement that you'd like to make?
Thank you, Chair. Just one to Ruth and Pete. Have there been any prosecutions for fraud along this line? And are there any in the pipeline? Thank you.
Ruth?
Thank you, Chair. I'm not aware of anything at this stage that looks like it's about to lead towards a fraud prosecution. We've put a lot of measures in place to try and detect and prevent fraud throughout the whole of the process, and Pete could probably confirm and maybe expand on that. We've also used our internal auditors, CMAP, that you're aware of, Councillor Shaw, through Audit Committee, to obviously do some checks and balances for us as well. I think, but I may be wrong on this, there were a couple of payments that were made that shouldn't have been. I think we put processes in place to recover that. So I think at the moment the picture is that we've put a lot of measures in place. We're still checking everything through. I'm not aware of anything that's going to lead to a prosecution at this stage.
Okay, thanks, Pete. Thanks, Ruth. Sorry, Pete. Is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, there's nothing that we've identified on the recent grant payouts. There were about 3 or 4 that were paid in the first batch, so that's going back to March, April time, and they're the ones that Ruth's referring to. But of those, I think it was 3 out of 5 we've recovered already. We contacted them and they paid the money back. And I think there's a payment arrangement for one other that's been put in place. So I think there's only one where we haven't, at this moment in time, determined how we're going to take that forward. But if we don't get the payment, then we'll look at options and we may go down the recovery process. But
okay, Carol.
That's a tremendous achievement when you think about the number of businesses that we've paid. And it's a lot better than I suspect a number of other councils will have performed.
Yeah, I'm going to bring Carol in to extend that, and then I'm going to bring Councillor Rostance and then Councillor Grounds.
Thank you, Chair. Whilst the schemes were being formulated and really nailed down with the Business Directorate of Government, we spent quite a lot of time on due diligence. And I'll never say never. And, you know, it could be that one day somebody will get through, but we've put loads of measures in place to prevent fraud. So we spent quite a bit of time, didn't we, Pete, doing all the due diligence up front. Yeah. It's paid off. So, yeah. But like I said, we'll never say never, but we do take a very cautious approach, Councillor Shaw.
I'd written down, I don't know if you can see that, I've written down the words due diligence.
Yeah.
Can I just ask a supplementary on this?
Okay, Dave.
We've heard so much about the work that we've been doing and how much more work we've been doing. What cost to the authority is it going to be in the end at the end of the financial, and can we recoup some of this loss back from the government?
Yeah, we can. In terms of where staff have been required to work overtime in revenues and benefits and finance, that the cost of that overtime we can charge to the COVID funding that we receive. So there isn't an additional cost to us. To be quite honest, my broader concern would be about the level of pressure that a number of officers have been under in terms of risking the health impacts. But we're trying to manage that as best we can. And so far, sickness levels are actually lower than they have been previously. I think the flexibility of working from home, so they've got a better work-life balance, has improved things significantly and has helped us to actually deliver what we have delivered.
Okay, Ruth, did you want to add anything before I bring Councillor Rostance on this issue?
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, it's going back to the original question from Councillor Shaw. We do intend to bring a report through to Audit Committee at an appropriate time in relation to the grant funding and obviously by reference to the fraud and the anti-fraud measures we've put in place as a result of the work that internal auditors will be doing with Pete. So there will be a report produced at an appropriate time on that as well, Councillor Shaw.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ruth. Councillor Kevin Rostance, and by the way, I'm not. The order is just I go from top left of my screen to the bottom right, so it's just the way you sit on my screen. So, Councillor Rostance.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. No questions really. It's just a thank you from my group to, I think we've got some fantastic officers all on call tonight. Carol, Ruth, Teresa and Pete. I just want to make sure that we do look after these people as well, because without them we'd be sadly lost, because they've done a tremendous job through all this. So my Christmas wishes go to them, and my thanks to my group, because they truly have done a magnificent job through all the strange times. And I don't know what we can do to ensure that we look after them, but we need to keep them on board. So well done, Pete, Teresa, Ruth and Carol. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. And it was a point that was made to the Cabinet directly on behalf of this this panel on whenever it was a few weeks ago. We made it very clear that it was from the top to the bottom. They've been nicknamed the Ashfield family, and they've done a tremendous job, and I'm sure they welcome the praise, because we don't often praise officers enough, do we, Kev? They get on with the donkey work, and Councillor Ross, do you want to bring Councillor Ross back in, Mike? No, you okay?
I've tried to, Chair. I'm asking him to unmute.
I'm unmuted.
Sorry, Kev, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, sorry. And Mike as well. But yeah, they've all done a fantastic job. But we do need to ensure that we look after all of them, because they've done tremendous work. So if we can give them a Christmas bonus, David.
I'm sure if you have a word with your colleague Robert Jenrick and see whether the DCLG, whether he'll pile a few extra bob in to look after staff bonuses, I'm sure that'll be well.
Yes, I think Pete's the man to speak to.
Councillor Austin, if I knew you were going to mention
not from the public purse.
I'd have brought you in earlier.
Finally, Councillor Grounds, sorry, I know you've been very patient tonight. Would you like to ask any of the officers any questions?
Well, I just want to echo what you and Kevin said, that the officers are all doing a fantastic job. It's really good. I don't have any questions myself, but Dave Martin has a question for Pete Hudson about is there any discretionary funds, and if you don't spend all the money, will you go back to those who have so far missed out?
This is something that I've discussed with the leader, and what we've decided is we will be paying, if there's any discretionary funds left, we will be paying top-up amounts to those that have already received them, because they're the ones that applied within the timeline. But we're going to be setting aside a proportion of funding because the discretionary funding that we've been allocated has to last us until the 31st of March 2022. So we've agreed that we will set aside a pot of funding that will assist us as part of our regeneration for business growth and business startup arrangements.
Okay, you're okay with that, Dale?
That's fantastic, thank you.
And that will be communicated, and I'm sure that once we get the information about the new grants, Jim and I will cascade it in our usual way to make sure that you're all kept in the loop. Thank you. Has anyone else got any questions before we move on to the next item? No. Well, thank you very much, everyone. That was an excellent debate. So I'd like now to move on, with your permission, to the COVID work plan. At the start of this process, we agreed to plan out the work of this panel to ensure the most effective use of our time. What do members think that the focus of the next meeting should be? I'll go through. What would you prefer us to be looking at, to be investigating, to be making recommendations to Cabinet on? Because as Teresa quite rightly pointed out, the Cabinet aren't ignoring our recommendations. So I think we're in a very good position to get our heads together and make sure that we make the strongest possible representation. So, Councillor, I'll do it backwards actually this time, just so that we don't think. Councillor Grounds, is there anything that you would like to add? I know that you've been very keen to look at business recognition, haven't you?
Yeah, have we got anywhere with that yet regarding handing certificates out or anything?
I think that with regards to that, Dale, what it was decided was that we would look to do it in January, because obviously this is a busy time for businesses. And so the Trevor and the team have launched a Shop Small campaign, for example, They've just put to bed the assistance with the business grants on the 29th of November, but it's certainly going to be a priority in January, and part of the council's scheme to try and drive footfall into our town centres. And Trev's got some exciting ideas. I've suggested some, and hopefully we'll present it to a future meeting. But yes, I mean, the issue, we're going to be putting out something in the next Ashfield Matters, asking people to maybe nominate their local business of the year. I know Councillor Rostance has been doing his. Is it Hucknall Heroes, Kev, or something like that? But there are plans to do that. But the reason why no progress has been made at the moment is because it's a hugely busy time, and rather than concentrating at this stage, and I'm sure it'd be very welcomed by businesses of giving out certificates, they are concentrating on making sure we give them the tools to continue to safely reopen, and make sure they take advantage of the busiest time of the year. Teresa, you want to add to that? Teresa Hodgkinson? Are you unmuting yourself?
Okay, just to add to that, it's not always about the council recognising as well councillor grounds, and the CHAB Awards this evening that went ahead. We've had a number of successful Ashfield businesses, community that's won awards this evening, so we're really pleased by that, particularly in some of the community awards as well in relation to how they've dealt with the pandemic. So it'll be good to get some publicity out, which Catherine was at the awards this evening. I make it sound really grand, but we were doing this really on a Zoom call. But it's just capitalising on other reward and recognition schemes that are out there as well, not just the council one. So congratulations to all the businesses this evening in Ashfield that did win awards, and also to Martin Wrigley as well, who's the chairman of Discover Ashfield, and he won a Lifetime Achievement Award.
Well, I don't have to remind you, Teresa, it's Martin Wrigley, MBE.
MBE.
So thank you, and congratulations to all the winners, as you say. And Dale, the council were the main backers of this, and what I'll do is the YouTube video is going to go online of the ceremony, which I'll forward to you, but I will continue our discussions about specifically honouring these businesses that have gone over and above, because I know you feel very strongly about it. As a panel, your voice should be heard. We'll make sure that happens. All right, Councillor Rostance. Are we unmuted? Yep, thank you, Kevin.
I know we're in the strange times that we are with the vaccine, etc. I don't think we can afford to take our foot off the pedal with the safety issues around the town centres and the rest of it, and all over. The sooner we get out of this, although I don't want people to get into a false sense of security, because the vaccine is going to be rolled out before Christmas and then after Christmas. We still need to get the message across on social media and in our town centres about the social distancing and the rest of it. I don't want people to become sort of complacent that the end is in sight, because it's far from it. So we need to just keep reminding people and doing the things that we are doing at the moment with the car parking, etc., just to keep people aware still and not complacent.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. And I mean, with regards to that, I've got to say, and I've something I've not really, because I work very closely with the comms team at this council, and I've got to say they've done a tremendous job. I spoke to one of your colleagues who you know very well at County Hall. I won't mention his name, maybe after. And he said that if you read the Nottingham Post during the pandemic, you would think that Ashfield Council were the only council actually bothering to do anything. And it was because our comms team were doing that. It's a clear priority. When councillors met in the middle of March to discuss the pandemic, communications were identified, and you have our complete assurance that we'll continue to do that in all areas in the district. Councillor, Trev, did you want to come in on that? Trevor Middleton, sorry.
Can I just add it? I didn't mention I'm doing a Christmas shop winner competition in all 4 areas. We're doing Sutton, Kirkby, and Hucknall and Ansley, Nunkagate. So we're doing that next week. I'm working with the Sutton Town Centre group. Got the Kirkby Tourism, 3 ladies from Kirkby Tourism and Tourism and Regeneration team. We're doing it socially distanced, but I've got the trophies, and we'll be doing highly commended, just to get give them, the retailers, some support and some recognition in next week. I know it's close to Christmas and I know they've had a tough time, but hopefully we get some PR, like just been saying about comms, and just get a bit of recognition for our town centres.
I can almost guarantee, Trevor, by probably the end of play tomorrow, you'll have a glut of nominations from Kirkby.
Brilliant.
It's how with Councillor Grounds' face. Right, okay. I'm going to go to Councillor Shaw. Dave, is there anything you want to add to the work plan? Do you think we should be concentrating on?
I just think we should be concentrating on our high streets, especially the empty shops, and what we can do to actually encourage those shops not to remain empty for any length of time, but not to encourage too many more charity shops in there. We want some specialist shops, some independent shops, and see what we can do to boost and help those businesses. Thank you, Chair.
Certainly, thank you, Dave. And before I bring in, I'm going to bring in Councillor Blagden, Councillor Walters, and Councillor Smallridge. It actually looks like Dad's Army, the top of my monitor tonight. No offence, lads. But before I do, I'm just going to move, and I don't intend to use too much of your time tonight, but I'm just going to move that we just suspend standing order, so we have an extra just half hour to close business. I don't anticipate to use the full half hour, but I'm going to propose that. I just need a seconder. Councillor Blagden. Those in favour, please show. Okay, is that okay to go on, Mike? Okay, thank you very much. So, Councillor Blagden, is there anything that you'd like to add to the work programme? I know you've raised tonight about stuff like thematic markets. Would you like to drive footfall into our town centres? Is that something you'd like us to look at?
I've done a forest shopping up now, but whether we'd ever get one, I don't know. Picked up on that. Yeah, Chairman, I would like, I mean, it'll be January. We should have the report back, hopefully, on the memorial. I'd like to move on that in January, look at it,
yeah, sure.
And get moving on that.
They're coming in thick and fast, Jim, but they're slow down to dribs and drabs. As soon as we're confident that we've got enough of them together, but then we'll provide a report to the committee. That will probably be February, though, not January, but we'll discuss it.
As long as
get our daily 8 o'clock meetings, Jim, we'll discuss it. Okay.
Yeah, we would need in January, definitely in February, an update on how many of our Ashfield citizens have actually received the vaccination. It would be interesting to find out.
Sure.
And also, well, I've dealt with it earlier, but we need a forward plan for markets and businesses for the summer. And I know we've never dealt with it, but I'd like to make sure that it's on the agenda.
Yeah, I think Trevor.
That's it, Chairman.
Thank you, Jim. I think Trevor committed to that before, didn't you, Trevor?
Yeah.
In any case. If he didn't, he has now, because he's just nodded. So thank you. So right, I'm going to ask, before I bring in Councillor Walters, I know Councillor Walters is substituting tonight. Councillor Smallridge, is there anything you'd like to add?
I think we all know that advertising works, and can we help to increase advertising for local businesses? Maybe in the increase in the a free magazine, for instance. Can we consider that? That's it.
We could look at increasing. Obviously, what I will say is that as a result of the last meeting, it's something that Jim and I took on board, and we've now had 4 major articles, and we've got another 3 outstanding, including Councillor Grounds' story. We're waiting for those to be published. So this panel has generated quite a bit of news. So, for example, the story about Speed the Plough and the Oasis Bar on Outer Street ended up in the Daily Mirror a week last Saturday, because Jim and I used our press contacts to drive that home. We've been working with businesses, we've been talking to businesses, we've been making sure that they know that the council know that we're on their side. But I'm very, very happy to discuss any other ways we can help the market, Councillor Smallridge. Okay, Councillor Walters, is there anything, I know you're observing tonight, but is there anything that you'd like to add, or is Bab saying that you're teasing the dog?
No, fine. I'm just listening and taking it all in, and it was an interesting evening, David. Thank you very much, Chair.
No problem at all. Okay, thanks, and thank you very much for stepping in the last minute, Dave. It's really appreciated. One thing that Councillor Wilkinson has raised with me this afternoon, and says she's suffering from flu, was that we look specifically at not just our town centres, but also areas like Stanton Hill, Huffway, places like Pathworth, off Watnall Road, etc., how we can do more. And I know that the panel have already listened. I know Trevor and Ian, as we mentioned before in the meeting, have been getting around those businesses. And as I think Ian mentioned, that some of them were quite surprised, which, you know, I mean, it'd be great to continue building on these relationships. And I think it's a good start. So that's something that Councillor Wilkinson has raised. So that's where we are. So what I'm going to do now is pass over to Mike to just give us the sort of draft dates for the next meeting. So to inform you, sorry, on the next dates for Cabinet for 2021, because if you remember when we set up, we were very keen to report directly into Cabinet. So that's why Jim and I have been attending the Cabinet meetings, and to have these meetings as close as possible. So, you know, it'd be good if we could have the meeting on a Thursday night in order to report to the Cabinet on the Tuesday. So, Mike, do you want to just let us know the dates of the Cabinet for 2021, please?
Yes, yeah. So just very quickly, we've got the 26th of January, we've got the 23rd of February and the 30th of March are the remaining dates of Cabinet. So at the moment, Chair, the January date, if you leave that with us, and we'll consult with you outside of the meeting, because at the moment, in terms of the clash of meetings towards the latter part of January after we return, is really heavy. So we're going to have to look at that. But on your report, page 26, the dates suggested, the 2nd of February, the 23rd of March and the 15th of April, what they do is allow us to have sufficient time to be able to pull briefing notes, sets of recommendations together to be able to circulate to Cabinet as and when they're made. So what I would probably suggest is, if members are happy to approve those next 3 dates, we can obviously consult with yourself and the Vice Chair on any further dates as and when needed.
Okay, are the panel happy with that? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy to move them, Chairman. Move the dates.
Okay, well, I'll second them, but I think what we're talking about at the moment, I don't think we need to set it in stone. Is that right, Mike? At the moment, it's just recommendations, because it's quite a bit municipal calendar, especially in January.
Yeah, definitely. So obviously, when we return from Christmas, there's quite a plethora of meetings towards the 2nd to 3rd week of January, and obviously, in terms of agenda dispatch, report preparation, we've got to ensure that we've got capacity both from all of the officers that are in attendance tonight to be able to support that, but also from our point of view. The meetings, yourself and the Vice Chair will liaise with us anyway, so there's some scope with us to work with you and discuss any alternatives, any informal meetings, or look at the dates. The only dates we'd set, this was the last date we'd formally set, which we agreed at the very first meeting of the Covid-19 Scrutiny Committee. So what I'd suggest is, if members are happy, we'll get those 3 sets of dates into the calendar, and obviously liaise with yourself and the Vice Chair with regards to any further need around those dates.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not overly precious, and we're quite flexible. The only thing I would say is, I've got to wait for the Champions League draw. I don't like my meetings to clash with my Man City matches, so we'll keep having a look at that. Right, okay, so item 5 is probably going to be the shortest item of the day, and the item concerns, can you still hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, can you still, oh right, good, it's gone quiet. The item concerns local government reorganisation. Ruth, do we have any updates on the issue?
Thank you, Chair. I don't believe there's been any real change since the last meeting. Carol, I'm not sure if you've actually had any further meetings with the chief executives
on
in the last few weeks.
LGR. No.
No. Okay.
So I think, yeah,
So,
no progress, I think.
So nothing to see here. We have no progress. I mean, it's a bit
As
of
we say at the football, Mr. Chairman, it's all gone quiet over there.
Well, I was lecturing last night about the VAR system, wasn't there, Ruth? So
yes.
nice to bring a bit of football into these meetings. But right, okay. So that's item 5. Finally, then. We're getting towards the end of the meeting, and I'd just like to thank a few people because I always like to do it, but these meetings wouldn't be possible without the excellent support of our committee services team, Mike, Joy, and Lynn. You'll notice tonight that there's something missing from the left-hand shoulder of Mike, and that's our Shane. Unfortunately, he's a bit poorly. Usually the excuse would be he was on a works do the night before, but on behalf of the panel, I'd also like to pass our thanks on to Shane.
He is actually in the meeting, Chair. He's just not on screen. So
First time he's been. Right. Well, listen, I'd like to, on behalf of the panel, thank yourselves because I know I'm incessantly on the phone. I'm incessantly minding, as is Jim, and the patience and the support that you've given this panel. Because when it was set up, there was jobs for the boys, there was all this, and we've heard tonight that actually. No, a lot of the stuff we're recommending to Cabinet is being implemented. And so thank you to the committee services team. Thank you to our officers team as well. Sounds like you won't be having much of a Christmas, especially people like Carol and Teresa and Ruth and, well, a lot of you. But listen, I hope you get some time to spend some time this Christmas with your family. And I hope that at some point, Councillor Rossnance will be able to meet young George. Have you met him yet? So you have to unmute yourself for this bit of emotion. Councillor Rossnance, have you met him yet?
Yeah, we meet on Zoom every night.
You meet him? Well, as I say, we met him on Zoom last night for about 2 hours. The wonder, I bet you're looking forward to a proper sort of hug. So, listen, on behalf of Councillor Blagden and I don't mention Councillor Blagden much. Councillor Blagden's an enormous help to me as chairman. Thank you to you all at the panel. And as I say, have a great Christmas. Have an even better New Year, and let's continue doing the hard work we do. Thank you, officers. Thank you, councillors. Good night.
Yes, Chairman.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas.